My phone buzzed. Voices from the kitchen. Jake thinks he's some big shot now. Mom scoffed.My stomach dropped. Years of sacrifice, mocked like a joke. The rent I paid, the bills I covered, the boat I bought, all for nothing. My name's Jake Larson, and I'm a 38-year-old mechanic from a small town in Ohio. I spent my life fixing cars, working long hours in a greasy shop to keep the lights on for my family. I ain't no millionaire, but I've always been the guy who says yes. Need a few bucks to cover the electric bill? Sure. Need help fixing the roof? I'm there. For years, I've been the one holding everything together for my folks, Mom, Dad, my sister Sarah, and even my lazy cousin Tommy. It started small, just pitching in here and there, but before I knew it, I was their lifeline. I paid the rent on their trailer, covered Mom's diabetes meds, fixed Dad's old pickup when it broke down, even shelled out cash for Tommy's business ideas that never went anywhere. I didn't mind at first. They're family, right? You don't let family struggle. But then came the day everything changed. It was Dad's 65th birthday, and I wanted to do something big. I'd saved up for months, skipping my own bills to make it happen. I bought him a shiny new fishing boat, nothing crazy, just a decent one with a good motor, the kind he'd always dreamed of but could never afford. I also paid off the last of their trailer loan, wiping out years of debt. I figured they'd be proud, maybe even grateful. I was wrong. The party was at the VFW hall, a big turnout with friends, neighbors, and half the family showing up. I'd rented the place, hired a guy to grill burgers and hot dogs, even set up a little table with photos of Dad's life, him as a kid, him in the army, him with us growing up. I was proud of it all. After the cake, I stepped outside to take a call from my boss about a rush job. When I came back, I heard voices near the kitchen door, Mom, Dad, Sarah, and Tommy. I wasn't trying to listen, but my name came up, and I stopped cold. Jake really thinks he's some big shot now, don't he? Mom said, her voice sharp like she was annoyed. Paying off the trailer, buying that boat. Like that makes him better than us. Sarah laughed, that high-pitched giggle she does when she's being mean. Yeah, he's so dumb. Thinks we need him to survive. Well, he's useful, I'll give him that, Dad said, chuckling. Keeps the bills paid and the truck running. Tommy piped up, free labor too. He fixed my whole crew's vans last month. Didn't even ask for a dime. What a sucker. I stood there, my stomach twisting into knots. A sucker? That's what they thought of me? Not a son, not a brother, just some idiot they could bleed dry? I felt my face get hot, my hands shaking. All those years of working overtime, skipping my own dreams, pouring every extra penny into them, and this is what I got? Laughter and insults behind my back? I walked back into the hall, my boots heavy on the floor. The party was still going, people eating, drinking, laughing like nothing was wrong. I didn't say a word. I just pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and started canceling stuff. The automatic rent payment for their trailer? Gone. The utility bill I covered every month? Done. The insurance on Dad's truck? Canceled. I even shut off the phone plan I paid for Sarah and Tommy. My fingers moved fast, like they had a mind of their own. What are you doing, Jake? Sarah asked, walking over with a plate of cake, her eyebrows scrunched up. I'm done, I said, not looking at her. All of it. You're on your own now. Dad set his beer down, frowning. What's that supposed to mean? It means I ain't paying for nothing no more, I said, my voice steady but loud enough for the room to hear. No rent, no bills, no boat payments. You're cut off. Mom's face went pale. Jake, don't be ridiculous. You can't just stop helping us. Watch me, I said. You think I'm a sucker? Fine. Let's see how you do without the sucker's money. The room got quiet, everyone staring. Tommy laughed nervously. Come on, man, it's a party. Don't make a scene. I ain't making a scene, I said, standing up straight. I'm just done being your bank account. Mom tried to play it off, her voice sharp. You're overreacting. We're family, Jake. Family don't talk about each other like that, I said, pointing toward the kitchen. I heard you. All of you. Laughing at me like I'm some fool. Well, this fool's done. I turned and walked out. The cool night air hit my face, and for a second, I thought they'd come after me, apologize, something. But they didn't. I got in my truck, started the engine, and drove home to my little apartment above the shop. That night, I sat on my couch, staring at the wall, feeling a mix of anger and relief. I'd been carrying them for so long, I didn't even know what it felt like to stand on my own. The next morning, my phone started buzzing. Mom, Jake, the electric bill's due today. You didn't send the money. What's going on? Ignored. Dad, son, you can't be serious. We need that rent paid. Ignored. Sarah, you're really gonna let us lose everything over some stupid argument? Ignored. By the end of the week, I had 22 missed calls. By the end of the month, it was 87. They didn't stop, and I didn't answer. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. It's been a couple weeks since I walked out of Dad's birthday party and cut off my family. After I stopped paying their bills, I figured they'd get mad, maybe yell a little, then figure things out. I was wrong. They didn't just get mad, they got desperate, and it hit me harder than I expected. The first few days were quiet, except for the phone calls I ignored. Mom, Dad, Sarah, and Tommy kept leaving messages, acting like nothing had changed. Jake, the water bill's late, Mom said in one. Jake, The truck needs gas, Dad grumbled in another. Sarah even texted, "You're really gonna let us freeze this winter?" I didn't respond. I'd made up my mind, and I wasn't going back. But then the call stopped, and that's when things got weird. One morning, I was under a Chevy at the shop, tightening a bolt, when my phone buzzed again. It was a number I didn't know. Against my better judgment, I wiped my hands on a rag and answered. "Hello, Jake, it's Linda," a shaky voice said. Linda's my aunt, Mom's sister, who lives a couple towns over. We ain't close, but she's always been decent to me. "Hey, Linda, what's up?" I asked, leaning against the workbench. She sighed, long and heavy. "I hate doing this, Jake, but your mom asked me to call. Things are bad over there. Real bad." I felt my gut tighten. "What kind of bad?" "They're behind on everything," she said. "The trailer rent didn't get paid, so the landlord's threatening to kick them out. The power got shut off yesterday. Your dad's truck broke down again, and they can't afford to fix it. Sarah's been crying nonstop, saying she can't pay her phone bill or buy groceries." I stayed quiet, letting her talk. I knew what was coming. "Jake, I know you're mad, and I don't blame you," Linda went on. "Your mom told me what happened at the party, how they said some awful things. But they're your family. They need you." I clenched my jaw, staring at a pile of old tires in the corner. "Linda, did Mom tell you I've been paying their bills for years? Rent, utilities, groceries, even Tommy's stupid business ideas? Did she tell you I worked double shifts to keep them afloat while they laughed at me behind my back?" Linda went quiet for a second. "She didn't mention that part," she admitted. "She just said you got upset and cut them off." "Yeah, well, there's a reason," I said, my voice hard. "I ain't their personal piggy bank no more. They made their bed." "I get it, Jake," she said softly. "I really do. But they're in a hole now, and I'm worried. Your mom's health ain't great, and your dad's drinking more than usual. I just thought you should know." I rubbed my forehead, feeling a headache coming on. "Thanks for telling me, Linda. But I ain't changing my mind. They gotta figure this out themselves." She sighed again. "All right. I won't bug you again. Take care, Jake." "You too," I said, and hung up. I stood there for a minute, staring at my phone, feeling a mix of guilt and anger. I didn't want them to suffer, but I couldn't keep carrying them either. I went back to the Chevy, trying to focus on the job, but my mind wouldn't settle. A few days later, they showed up at the shop. I was in the middle of an oil change when I heard the bell over the door jingle. I slid out from under the car and saw Mom, Dad, and Sarah standing there, looking pissed off and tired. Mom's hair was messy, Dad's shirt was stained, and Sarah had dark circles under her eyes. "Jake, we need to talk," Mom said, crossing her arms. I wiped my hands on a rag and stood up. "All right, talk." "We're in trouble," Dad said, his voice gruff. "The landlord's giving us a week to pay the rent or get out. The power's been off for 3 days. We can't live like this." "Not my problem," I said, keeping my tone even. Sarah stepped forward, her eyes flashing. "How can you say that? We're your family, Jake. You can't just let us lose everything." "I ain't letting you do nothing," I shot back. "You did this to yourselves. I paid for everything, rent, power, your phone, Dad's truck, for years. And what did I get? You calling me a sucker behind my back." Mom's face softened, but only a little. "Jake, we didn't mean it like that. We were just joking around." "Joking?" I said, raising my voice. "You laughed at me. Said I was dumb for helping you. Well, I ain't dumb no more." Dad shook his head. "Son, we're sorry, all right? But we need help. Just this once, get us back on our feet." I crossed my arms, staring them down. "No. You want to get back on your feet? Get jobs. Budget your money. Fix your own mess." Sarah scoffed. "You're unbelievable. You're really gonna watch us get kicked out?" "I ain't watching nothing," I said. "I'm done. You figure it out." Mom's eyes got watery, but she didn't cry. "Jake, please. We're family. Family don't treat each other like you treated me," I said. "No, I got work to do. You need to leave." They stood there for a minute, like they thought I'd change my mind. When I didn't, Dad muttered something under his breath, turned, and walked out. Sarah followed, glaring at me. Mom was the last to go, giving me a long, hard look before she left. The bell jingled again, and they were gone. I went back to the oil change, my hands shaking a little. I didn't feel good about it, but I didn't feel bad either. I felt free, maybe, like a weight was starting to lift. But I knew this wasn't the end. They weren't going to give up that easy, and I had a feeling things were about to get uglier. It's been about a month since I cut my family off. After they showed up at my shop begging for help and I sent them packing, I thought they might finally get the message. I was wrong. They didn't back off. They just changed tactics, and it started getting messy. The first wave came through my phone. After I stopped answering their calls, they switched to texts and voicemails, piling on the guilt. Mom left one saying, "Jake, we're your family. How can you turn your back on us like this?" Dad's was gruffer. "I didn't raise you to be this selfish, son. We're in a bad spot." Sarah went for the dramatic. "I can't believe you'd let us suffer. Mom's crying all the time, and it's your fault." Even Tommy chimed in. "Man, I thought we were cool. Guess I was wrong." I listened to a few, then started deleting them without opening. I'd heard enough. Then they got sneaky. One evening, I was locking up the shop when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a picture of the trailer, dark and quiet, with the caption, "This is what you've done to us. No power, no heat. Hope you're proud." I knew it was Sarah. She's the only one who'd pull something that theatrical. I stared at it for a minute, feeling a twinge in my chest, but then I remembered how she'd laughed at me at Dad's party. I deleted it and kept walking. A couple days later, they took it up a notch. I was at the shop, working on a busted transmission, when my buddy Mike, who runs the front desk, stuck his head in. "Jake, you got a visitor. Some guy named Bill." I frowned, wiping my hands on a rag. "Bill who?" "Says he's a friend of your dad's," Mike said, shrugging. "Looks upset." I sighed and headed to the waiting area. Sure enough, there was Bill Harper, an old guy who used to fish with Dad. I'd known him since I was a kid, but we weren't close. He stood there in a faded flannel shirt, hands in his pockets, looking nervous. "Hey, Bill," I said, crossing my arms. "What's going on?" He shuffled his feet, avoiding my eyes. "Jake, I hate to bother you at work, but I saw your folks yesterday. They're in rough shape, man. Your mom's barely eating, and your dad's drinking too much. They told me you cut them off, and I had to come see if it's true." I felt my jaw tighten. "Yeah, it's true." "Did they tell you why?" Bill hesitated. "They said you got mad over something at your dad's party and stopped helping. Said they don't know what they did wrong." I let out a bitter laugh. "They didn't tell you I've been paying their bills for years? Rent, power, groceries, even Tommy's dumb schemes? Or how they laughed at me behind my back, called me a sucker for doing it?" Bill's eyes widened. "No, they didn't mention that." "Didn't think so," I said. "They used me, Bill. Took everything I had and gave me nothing but grief. I'm done." He nodded slowly, like he was piecing it together. "I get it, Jake. I do. But they're struggling bad. The trailer's got an eviction notice on it. They might end up on the street." "Not my problem anymore," I said, keeping my voice steady. "They're grown-ups. They can figure it out." Bill sighed. "All right, son. I won't push. Just thought you should know. Thanks for stopping by," I said, and walked back to the transmission. I could feel his eyes on me as he left, but I didn't turn around. It shook me up a little, though. I didn't want them homeless, but I couldn't keep bailing them out either. The next move came a week later, and it was low, even for them. I got a call from the shop's owner, Mr. Dawson, asking me to come to his office. He's a good guy, been my boss for 10 years, and he doesn't mess around. When I walked in, he was sitting at his desk, looking uncomfortable. "Jake, sit down," he said, motioning to a chair. "We got a problem." "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting. He rubbed his temples. "I got a call this morning from a woman claiming to be your sister. Sarah, right?" My stomach dropped. "Yeah. What did she say?" "She was crying. Said you've been having a rough time lately," he said. "Told me you're under a lot of stress, maybe even having some kind of breakdown. Asked if I could give you some time off to get your head straight." I clenched my fists, my face getting hot. "She said what?" "I know it's crazy," Mr. Dawson said, holding up a hand. "I told her you've been fine, best mechanic I got." But she kept going, saying your family's worried about you, that you're not yourself. "She's lying," I said, my voice shaking with anger. "They're mad because I stopped paying their bills, and now they're trying to mess with my job." Mr. Dawson nodded. "Figured it was something like that. I told her I'd talk to you, but I ain't buying it. You're solid, Jake. Always have been." "Thanks, boss," I said, exhaling. "If she calls again, tell her to leave me alone. They're just stirring up trouble." "Will do," he said. "You all right?" "Yeah," I lied. "I'm good." I walked out of his office, my head spinning. They weren't just guilt-tripping me anymore. They were trying to sabotage my life. I went back to work, but I couldn't focus. All I could think about was how far they'd go to drag me back in. That night, I sat in my apartment, staring at the ceiling. The guilt was there, nagging at me, but so was the anger. I'd given them everything, money, time, sweat, and they'd thrown it back in my face. Now they were playing dirty, and I had to decide how much more I could take. My name's been dragged through the mud by Mom, Dad, Sarah, and Tommy, but I've held firm. After they tried to mess with my job by calling my boss with fake stories about a breakdown, I thought they'd hit rock bottom. Turns out, they had one more trick up their sleeve, and it pushed me over the edge. It started with a voicemail. I'd gotten used to ignoring their calls, but this one came from Sarah, and her voice sounded different, shaky, scared. "Jake, please, I know you're mad, but this is serious. Dad's in deep trouble. Call me back." I stared at my phone, my thumb hovering over the delete button. Something in her tone made me pause. Against my better judgment, I called her back. She picked up on the first ring. "Jake, thank God," she said, her voice trembling. "We need your help." "What's going on?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. "It's Dad," she said. "He got mixed up with some bad people. He borrowed money to keep the trailer, and now they're after him. They're threatening to hurt him if we don't pay up." I frowned, leaning against my kitchen counter. "Who's are they?" "Some guys he met at the bar," she said quickly. "They lent him $5,000, and now they want 10 back by the end of the week. Jake, they came to the trailer last night. They smashed a window and said next time it'd be worse." My heart started pounding, but my head was screaming that something wasn't right. $5,000? That's it." "Yeah," she said. "We don't have it. We're broke. Please, Jake, you're the only one who can help." I rubbed my temple, trying to think. "Put Dad on the phone." He's not here, she said, her voice cracking. He's too scared to talk. He's hiding out at a friend's place. Which friend? I pressed. Bill's, she said after a pause. You know, Bill Harper. I went quiet. Bill had come to see me a couple weeks ago, guilt-tripping me for my folks. If Dad was really hiding at his place, why didn't Bill mention it? And $5,000? That was exactly what I used to send them every few months to cover bills. Too neat, too convenient. Sarah, I said slowly, what's the name of these guys? What? She said, sounding flustered. The guys Dad borrowed from, I said. What's their name? It's Tony, she said. Yeah, Tony and his crew. Tony who? I asked. Where's he from? I don't know, Jake, she snapped. What does it matter? They're dangerous. I laughed, cold and hard. You're full of it, Sarah. This is a scam, ain't it? She went silent, and that's when I knew. Jake, I swear. Save it. I cut her off. You think I'm that stupid? I've been fixing cars for people my whole life. I know when someone's lying. You made this up to get money out of me. Jake, please, she said, her voice desperate now. Even if you don't believe me, just help us. We're drowning. No, I said. You're not drowning. You're just mad I ain't bailing you out no more. Good luck with your fake loan sharks. I hung up, my hands shaking with anger. They'd sunk to a new low, trying to scare me into giving them cash with a made-up story. I paced my apartment, trying to calm down, but I couldn't shake it. They weren't just using me. They were willing to lie, to manipulate, to do anything to keep me on the hook. The next day, I took action. I went to the shop early, before anyone else got there, and pulled out my phone. I blocked Mom's number, Dad's, Sarah's, and Tommy's. I even blocked Aunt Linda and Bill Harper, just in case they got roped into more guilt trips. Then I called my phone company and got a new number. I wasn't taking chances anymore. But they didn't stop there. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, just my name scrawled on the envelope. Inside was a handwritten note from Mom. Jake, we're losing the trailer. The landlord's evicting us tomorrow. I don't know where we'll go. I can't believe you'd let this happen to your own parents. Please, just talk to us. There was a smudged spot on the paper, like she'd been crying when she wrote it. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the letter. For a second, I felt that old pull, the guilt, the need to fix things. Then I remembered the party, the laughter, Sarah's fake tears on the phone. I tore the letter in half and threw it in the trash. They weren't my responsibility anymore. That night, I went to bed feeling lighter than I had in years. But the next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from a new number. It was Tommy. Trailer's gone. We're sleeping in Dad's truck. Hope you're happy. I stared at it, my stomach twisting, but I didn't reply. I blocked the number and went to work. By the end of the week, I heard through the grapevine, Mike at the shop, who knows everybody, that they'd moved into a cheap motel on the edge of town. Mom was sick. Dad was drinking. Sarah was yelling at anyone who'd listen, and Tommy was nowhere to be found. I didn't feel good about it, but I didn't feel bad either. I felt done. They pushed me too far, and I wasn't going back. I thought Mom, Dad, Sarah, and Tommy would finally leave me alone. I blocked their numbers, changed mine, and started building a life that didn't revolve around fixing their messes. But family like mine doesn't give up easy, and they came at me with one last desperate move. It happened on a Saturday. I was at the shop, finishing up a break job, when Mike, my buddy who runs the front desk, poked his head in. Jake, there's a lady here to see you. Says she's your cousin. I frowned, setting down my wrench. Cousin? Which one? Name's Rachel, he said. She's waiting out front. Rachel's my cousin on Dad's side, a quiet woman who lives a couple hours away. We've never been close, but she's always been kind, never asked me for anything. I wiped my hands on a rag and walked out to the waiting area. There she was, standing by the counter in a plain coat, her brown hair pulled back, looking nervous. Hey, Rachel, I said, crossing my arms. What brings you here? She gave me a small, awkward smile. Hey, Jake, can we talk somewhere private? I nodded and led her to the break room, a little space with a coffee maker and a couple chairs. We sat down, and she took a deep breath before speaking. I know things have been rough with your folks, she said. I've stayed out of it, but I can't anymore. They're in bad shape, Jake. I leaned back, keeping my face neutral. What kind of bad shape? They're living in a motel, she said, her voice soft. It's a dump, dirty, no heat, barely any food. Your mom's got a cough that won't go away, and your dad's drinking himself sick. Sarah's trying to hold it together, but she's falling apart too. They asked me to come talk to you. I felt a knot in my stomach, but I didn't let it show. What do they want? They need help, Rachel said. Just enough to get them into an apartment, maybe cover a few bills until they can get back on their feet. They know they messed up, Jake. They're sorry. I let out a short laugh, shaking my head. Sorry? They ain't sorry. They're just broke. Rachel's eyes dropped to the table. Maybe, but I've seen them, and it's bad. I'm worried your mom's really sick. She needs a doctor, but they can't afford it. I clenched my jaw, memories of the party flashing through my head, the laughter, the insults, the years of being their cash cow. Rachel, did they tell you I paid their bills for years? Rent, utilities, groceries, even bought Dad a fishing boat? Did they tell you they called me a sucker behind my back? She looked up, surprised. No, they didn't say that. Didn't think so, I said. They used me, Rachel. Took everything I had and laughed about it. Now they're sending you to guilt me into helping again. She nodded slowly, like she was seeing the bigger picture. I didn't know all that. They just said you got mad and cut them off. Yeah, well, there's more to it, I said. I ain't going back. They made their choices. Rachel sighed, rubbing her hands together. I get it, Jake. I do. But I can't just watch them fall apart. If you won't help, I'll have to figure something out myself. That's your call, I said. But don't let them drag you down too. They're good at that. She stood up, giving me a sad smile. Thanks for talking to me. I won't bother you again. Take care, Rachel, I said as she walked out. I sat there for a minute, feeling the weight of her words. Part of me wanted to help, to make sure Mom got to a doctor, but I knew it wouldn't stop there. They'd take and take until I had nothing left again. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Mom's cough, Dad's drinking, Sarah's desperation. I almost picked up the phone to call Rachel, to say I'd pay for a doctor visit, but I stopped myself. I'd been down that road before. Instead, I got up, grabbed a beer from the fridge, and sat on my couch, staring at the wall. I wasn't going back, no matter how hard they pushed. After Rachel's visit, I braced myself for more guilt trips, but nothing came. The silence was strange, almost unsettling, like the calm before a storm. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call that changed everything. I was at home one evening, eating a sandwich and watching TV, when my phone rang. It was a local number I didn't recognize. I hesitated, then answered. Hello? Jake, it's Pastor Dan, a familiar voice said. Pastor Dan runs the little church down the road from my shop. I ain't much for church, but I've known him for years. He's a good man, always helping folks out. Hey, Pastor, I said, setting my sandwich down. What's up? I need to talk to you about your family, he said, his tone serious but kind. Can you come by the church tomorrow? I felt my guard go up. What about them? They've been coming to our food pantry, he said. Your mom's not doing well, Jake. I'd rather talk in person. I sighed, rubbing my forehead. All right, I'll stop by after work. The next day, I drove to the church, a small brick building with a patchy lawn. Pastor Dan was waiting in his office, a cluttered room with a desk and a couple chairs. He stood up when I walked in, shaking my hand. Thanks for coming, Jake, he said, motioning for me to sit. I know this ain't easy for you. Just tell me what's going on, I said, sitting down. He nodded, leaning forward. Your folks and Sarah have been coming to the pantry for a few weeks. They're living in that motel, but it's falling apart. Your mom's got a bad cough, and she's lost weight. I'm worried it's pneumonia or something worse. Your dad's drinking heavy, and Sarah's trying to keep them fed, but she's struggling. I stared at the floor, feeling that old guilt creeping in. They tell you why they're in this mess? They said you used to help them out, but you stopped, he said. Didn't give me details, just said there was a falling out. I snorted. Yeah, that's one way to put it. I paid their bills for years, rent, food, everything. Even bought Dad a boat. Then I found out they were laughing at me, calling me a sucker. I cut them off after that. Pastor Dan's eyes softened. I'm sorry, Jake. That's tough. But I'm not here to guilt you. I'm here to help. Help how? I asked, frowning. I've got a plan, he said. The church has a small fund for emergencies. I can get your mom to a doctor, maybe pay for a month's rent in a decent apartment. But there's a catch, they've got to agree to some rules. No drinking for your dad, and Sarah's got to get a job. I'll work with them, make sure they stick to it. I blinked, surprised. You do that? Yeah, he said. But I need your okay. I don't want to step on your toes, and I won't tell them you're involved. I thought about it, weighing the options. All right, I said finally. Help them, but don't let them know I had anything to do with it. And if they don't follow your rules, that's on them. Fair enough, he said, smiling. I'll keep you posted. I left the church feeling lighter, like maybe there was a way out of this mess that didn't involve me going back. Pastor Dan was an unexpected ally, and for the first time, I felt like I wasn't alone in this. It's been 6 months since I stopped paying my family's bills. After Pastor Dan stepped in to help Mom, Dad, and Sarah, I started to feel like I could finally move on. The road's been rough, but I'm finding my way, and the ending ain't what I expected. A few weeks after my meeting with Pastor Dan, he called me with an update. Jake, your mom's doing better, he said. Got her to a doctor. Turns out it was bronchitis, not pneumonia. She's on meds now, and she's eating again. Your dad's cut back on the drinking, and Sarah's working part-time at the diner. I leaned against my truck, relieved but cautious. They sticking to your rules? So far, yeah, he said. We got them into a small apartment, nothing fancy, but it's clean and warm. They're grateful, Jake. They don't know you're involved, like you asked. Good, I said. Thanks, Pastor. I appreciate it. No problem, he said. I'll keep an eye on them. You take care of yourself. That was the last I heard from him for a while. I threw myself into work, picking up extra shifts at the shop. I started saving money, not for them, but for me. I even took a weekend off, first time in years, and went fishing on a lake a couple hours away. It was quiet, peaceful, and I realized I could live like this, free from their weight. Then, one day, I got a letter. It was from Sarah, handwritten on notebook paper. Jake, it started. I don't know if you'll read this, but I need to say it. We're sorry. I'm sorry. We took you for granted. and we were wrong. I'm working now, and mom and dad are trying. We're not perfect, but we're getting by. I hope you're okay. Maybe someday we can talk. No begging, no guilt, just an apology. I sat at my kitchen table, reading it over and over. Part of me wanted to crumple it up, but another part felt something soften. I didn't write back, not yet, but I kept the letter in a drawer. It was a start, maybe. A month later, I saw them by chance. I was at the hardware store, picking up some tools, when I spotted mom and dad in the next aisle. They looked different, cleaner, healthier. Mom's cough was gone, and dad wasn't swaying like he used to. They didn't see me, and I didn't call out. I just watched for a minute, then turned and left. They were okay, and that was enough. Now, it's been a year since that night at dad's party. I'm still at the shop, still fixing cars, but I'm different. I've got savings, a little cabin I'm fixing up on the edge of town, and plans to take a real vacation next summer. Mom, Dad, and Sarah are still in that apartment, making it work with Pastor Dan's help. They've reached out a couple times, short notes, no pressure, and I've started to think about replying. Not to go back, but to build something new on my terms. I ain't the guy who says yes to everything anymore. I've learned to say no, to put myself first. My family's learning too, figuring out how to stand on their own. It ain't perfect, and it ain't easy, but it's a start. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm driving my own road, and I ain't looking back.